Batman issue 90 sees Deathstroke learn that all of his assassin friends have been taken down by Batman, but someone else is on the other end of the line. That someone else is Harley Quinn, who is aiding Batman by flying the drones after Deathstroke. Harley was told by Batman that the non-lethal drones won't kill him, but the rubber bullets will still welt, especially around the face and eyes. Elsewhere, Lucius wonders if involving Harley Quinn is a good idea, but Bruce tells him it's temporary, and if it looks like she's going to kill Slade, he is to cut her drone control. Bruce and Selina look over the under construction city, which Selina knows is beautiful, something new being built from something old. Bruce tells her to tell him everything she knows, and Selina knows she has to, so she is sorry. Selina tells Bruce that years before, when she was still a criminal, she received a letter with an ornate D on it, something she had heard only in legends of a master criminal. Following the invitation, Catwoman is led to a dock, where she is met by the Joker, Penguin, and Riddler, whom also got a card. Soon a boat with a strange green smoke-covered man arrives, ferrying them across the bay. The villains all find this rather melodramatic, but Catwoman doesn't trust any of them or what is happening. Soon they arrive at a dock where a strange house appears on the water. The doors open and the mysterious designer welcomes them to the Tartarus house. Heading inside, the villains are made to give up all of their weapons, as Joker says this isn't boring like Penguin thought it would be. In fact, it's much like a circus. Designer says that Joker's reputation precedes him, but Joker says that's the whole point of a reputation, and he has no idea who the villain is. The villains all are taken into a dining room, as Selina remembers it was simpler times back then, where the city stank of corruption and horror, and Batman still had a Robin to chase her down with. She knew if someone had a colourful costume and skills, they could just rob a bank for the thrill of it, and while they would have to confront Batman and Robin once in a while, chances are they would get away with the prize and use the loot to improve their crafts. Bruce stops her story, telling her this isn't a time for nostalgia, but Selina says he needs to remember what it was like for any of them for it all to make sense, since back then this is when it all started for them, since it's when complexity stepped into their game. Designer thanks the villains for joining him, saying that he's been watching the villains for some time, watching them lose time and time again to Batman, but now he wishes to offer his expertise, telling the villains of his youth and how he fought the finest detective in the world. He thought of the man as a nuisance, but then realized he needed to think bigger, devising a crime, thinking how his nemesis would thwart it, then how he might unthwart it. Because of this, he began increasing his motive and manpower until it wasn't just plotting a crime for personal gain, it was to simply just try and beat the detective at his own game. Yet he continued to lose, until he realized he was playing the game on the detective's terms. Spending years in his planning room in the house, he knew to win, he would need to become the man he might have become after fighting him for 20 years without evolving. He knows the man who left that room that day wasn't the man who entered it, and he had become the designer. Designer says that the detective soon fell, broken by what the villain had done to him, and soon died a shadow of the man the world remembered him to be. He offers the villains a chance to evolve like he did, and he will give them the means to accomplish what they currently cannot, and in return, he will get exactly half of what they reap when they unleash their designs upon Gotham City. Designer begins his meetings, seeing each villain individually, and soon he sees Catwoman, who talks about the biggest heist she can think of, but then the designer tells her how Batman would dismantle her plan before telling her of what would actually be the largest monetary heist in the history of the planet. This interests Selina greatly, and the power of it spoke to her, knowing Batman would never see it coming. Selina finishes her time with Designer, returning to Riddler and Penguin as Joker goes in to see the villain. She chats and laughs with the villains about their own plans with assassins and labyrinths that will stop law enforcement, and what the designer told them to do. Soon after hours, the villains grow uneasy since Joker hasn't come out yet, but soon she begins to understand what the Joker would become, knowing it was like staring into an abyss, realizing this strange clown makeup wearing crime boss would eventually become something apocalyptic. Designer leaves his room, ordering Catwoman, Riddler, Penguin, and Joker all to be killed. The villains fight off the designer's men, but before he can kill Oswald, Joker shoots him in the head with a hidden gun he had, killing his men as well. Joker says he told the designer a joke, but he didn't think it was funny, so the villain tried to kill them and he just saved them all. Riddler knows that if they pooled their resources, they could still salvage their plans and do them, but Oswald knows that the designs wouldn't work without designer's financial backing. Selina wonders what they will do now with them, so Oswald says that his men will deal with the bodies and the house will be sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, knowing it best the designer remain a myth and they never met him. The villains leave and Edward comments about how horrible of a waste this all was. Riddler and Penguin set fire to the house as Selina watches the Joker Joker, who just stares off into the city as the bat signal lights up the night sky. She knows something changed in the Joker that night, and that night was the first time Catwoman had seen the evil the Joker would really become. Batman knows that Selina isn't telling him everything, and she knows it's the hardest part, since the designer is alive and somehow he's getting back at all of the villains by using their plans that they gave him, like Selina's grand heist. Bruce knows it's about him, and the designer is coming for his family's money, Wayne Enterprises, and everything he owns. Batman issue 90 was a really great reveal issue in that we finally learned a lot of information about the designer, but still don't know a lot about him. I enjoyed the way Catwoman framed the story, reminding Bruce that this all happened at a time where things really were just black and white, hero versus villain type stories. He's got to catch one of the villains, one being Catwoman. I'm intrigued to learn what Joker could have told the designer to make him turn on them, and I'm sure we will find out very soon. The only part of the issue I didn't particularly like was, again, Bruce seems to be losing his fortune, which is quite an overplayed trope with Batman in my opinion, and it seems time and time again a writer comes in to do it, and they think it's the status quo change that if Batman doesn't have any of the gadgets or anything, it makes things harder, when really the moral of the story ends up being he doesn't really need the money. So I'm hoping I'm wrong about that, and maybe James Tynion will subvert my expectations on that. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10.